your movie is really funny. It's really funny. By myself, laughing out loud hysterically today.
It is one of the most important contributions to cinema in American history.
Your goal is to conduct an investigation into something key to the culture war.
There were so many great moments in there.
Were these people real that are in this movie?
It's a great film.
I highly recommend everybody go see this movie.
Mazel tov, as
thanks.
Ben's people would say.
Am I Racist? Rated PG-13 in theaters now.
Today on the Matt Walsh Show, we'll take a look at the latest hoax that the media and the Democrats are pushing to advance their pro-abortion agenda. Also, Kamala Harris has a campaign rally with Oprah where she launches into what may be, even by her standards, the most cringy and unintelligible ramble we've ever heard from her or anyone else. And adultery is big in the news this week. A prominent political reporter allegedly had a quote-unquote personal relationship with RFK Jr. while covering his campaign. And White Dudes for Harris releases their first ad. It's worse than you're expecting. All of that and more today on the Matt Walsh Show. Am I Racist is the #1 new comedy in America and now playing only in theaters. Get tickets and showtimes for your local theaters now at amiracist.com. Being a husband, father, and host of my own show means life never slows down. Imagine trying to eat 31 different fruits and vegetables every day. It sounds pretty time-consuming. Who has time for that? But here's the good news. With Balance of Nature fruits and veggies, there's never been a more convenient dietary supplement to ensure you get a wide variety of fruits and vegetables every day with 31 different whole fruits and vegetable ingredients. Balance of Nature takes fruits and veggies, they freeze, dry them, turn them into a powder, and then put them in a capsule. You take your fruit and vegetable capsule every day, and then your body knows what to do with them. Go to balanceofnature.com, use promo code Walsh for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer. Plus, get a free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com, promo code Walsh. We're getting to the point where even the most left-wing news outlets are becoming frustrated with how little Kamala Harris is speaking to the press. Axios, for example, reported the other day, exclusive, the Harris-Walz ticket is on pace to do fewer interviews and press conferences than any major party's presidential pairing in modern U.S. history. So according to the data, J.D. Vance alone has done 7 times more interviews and press conferences than Kamala and Tim Walz combined. Now, this near total media blackout makes it all the more important to pay attention to the very few times that Kamala Harris is willing to speak off the cuff. And we had one of those moments earlier this week when Kamala spoke with something called the National Association of Black Journalists, or NABJ. Still not clear why we have a segregated association of black journalists or why politicians think it's important to speak to them, but apparently this is considered to be a worthwhile stop for every candidate. Donald Trump spoke to the NABJ a few weeks ago, and he was heckled throughout his appearance, and the moderators were extremely hostile to him, but he did it anyway. Kamala Harris, on the other hand, was not heckled by the Black Journalists Association or asked any difficult questions. Instead, for roughly an hour, she was allowed to lie repeatedly without being interrupted or corrected a single time, as far as I can tell. And one of those lies was especially egregious. In response to a question about abortion, Kamala Harris suggested that the so-called heartbeat bill in Georgia, which bans abortion after a heartbeat is detected, was to blame for the recent death of a 28-year-old woman named Amber Thurman. And by extension, Kamala Harris implicated Donald Trump, the Supreme Court, and, of course, the entire pro-life movement. Watch.
We need to put the protections of Roe v. Wade back into law. And when that bill gets passed by Congress, I will proudly sign it into law. Understand what is happening in our country. Over 20 states have passed what I call Trump abortion bans because I understand how we got here. The former president handpicked 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. They did as he intended, and in state after state, laws have been passed criminalizing healthcare providers. I don't know if anyone here has heard most recently the stories out of Georgia. Tragic story about a young woman who died because it appears the people who should have given her health care were afraid they'd be criminalized after the Dobbs decision came down.
So first she portrays Donald Trump as nefarious because he handpicked 3 Supreme Court justices. I guess he was supposed to, just draw their names from a hat or something? And then Kamala launches into a narrative that's been making its way throughout the mainstream media in recent days. It originated in an outlet called ProPublica, which is best known for posting a series of recent hit pieces on Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. And here's how one news station reported on the story. Watch.
A Georgia woman has been identified as one of the first known deaths related to a lack of abortion care access.
Yeah, that's according to her family and state documentation obtained by nonprofit newsroom ProPublica.
Nonprofit newsroom ProPublica released a report on internal documents it obtained from the Georgia committee tasked with reviewing pregnancy-related deaths. The report indicated the committee, run by the State Department of Health, determined the death of 28-year-old Amber Thurman was likely preventable if she'd had access to abortion care in her home state of Georgia. The report states Amber was going on 8 weeks pregnant at the time. Her family sharing with 11 Alive that she drove to North Carolina to obtain FDA-approved medication to terminate the pregnancy, saying by the time she arrived back to Georgia, she'd started bleeding heavily. According to medical records cited by ProPublica, Amber was rushed to a hospital in Metro Atlanta, where doctors noted twice that a DNC procedure should be considered to remove the infection. But the procedure, often used for abortions, wasn't done, not even when Amber became septic.
She was clearly septic, and she was hemorrhaging. She should have had a DNC right then and there.
Vice President Kamala Harris issuing a statement Tuesday, writing in part, "This is exactly what we feared when Roe was struck down, and now women are dying." Advocates of Georgia's abortion law say it has clear exceptions for medical emergencies and includes expanded support for expectant mothers, from broadening Medicaid coverage to expanding maternal health resources like in-home medical visits in rural and underserved areas of the state.
You'd be hard-pressed to find a more absurd and self-contradictory news segment anywhere on television. The report begins by stating that Amber Thurman died because of a lack of abortion care access, quote unquote, abortion care access, otherwise known as killing your baby. According to this report, Thurman's death was preventable because she drove from Georgia to North Carolina to get an abortion when she was about 9 weeks pregnant with twins. But because of a traffic jam, she missed her appointment, so she was given abortion pills. Then she drove back to Georgia, where she began suffering serious complications from sepsis, which is a potentially fatal response to bacterial infection. And then, according to this report, doctors in Georgia didn't perform a so-called DNC procedure in order to save the life of the mother, waited more than 20 hours before significant intervention, supposedly because they were worried that they might be prosecuted under Georgia's heartbeat law. This is all according to these reports. And then, after all this reporting, they casually mention at the very end of the news report that actually none of this has anything to do with Georgia's heartbeat law, which has clear exceptions in emergencies where the life of the mother is at stake. And that's true. I mean, just that's a fact about what's in the law. Whether you agree or disagree with the law, here's what it says directly from the Georgia Department of Health, quote, "The law provides that no abortion shall be performed if the unborn child has a detectable human heartbeat except A, in the event of a medical emergency or medically futile pregnancy, or B, in cases involving rape or incest in which an official police report has been filed and where the probable gestational age of the unborn child is 20 weeks or less. The law does not prohibit the removal of a dead unborn child caused by a spontaneous abortion or the removal of an ectopic pregnancy." Now, anyone connecting this incident to the Georgia heartbeat law is lying. And they're doing it in the most flagrant and reprehensible way imaginable. They're using the death of a young woman and her 2 children in order to defame the pro-life movement. The Atlantic, for example, wrote this, quote, "Some tragedies are impossible to prevent or even to predict. The death of Amber Nicole Thurman was not. She was perhaps the first woman killed by the overturning of Roe v. Wade." Now, for her part, Kamala Harris said in a statement, "This young mother should be alive, raising her son and pursuing her dream of attending nursing school. Now women are dying. These are the consequences of Donald Trump's actions." Now, this is a story that Kamala Harris pushes at every opportunity. Yesterday, she sat down with Oprah, for example, and we'll have more with her about her exchange with Oprah later on in the show. But I'm going to show you this part right now because they strongly imply once again that Georgia's law somehow was involved in what happened here. And then they play a montage that contradicts that narrative. Watch.
Amber's case came to light through the reporting of journalist Kavitha Sarana with ProPublica. And so listen to her story.
2 years ago,
28-year-old Amber Nicole Thurman, a medical assistant and a single mother to a 6-year-old boy, found out she was pregnant. Amber had just secured her own apartment and was thinking about going to nursing school. She made the decision to terminate her pregnancy. A strict abortion ban had recently taken place in her home state of Georgia, which caused Amber to travel to North Carolina for the procedure. Traffic made her miss the appointment, so the clinic gave her medication, what are known as abortion pills. Once back home, Amber experienced profuse bleeding, vomiting, severe pain. She eventually passed out. Her boyfriend called for an ambulance. At the Georgia hospital, Amber's condition deteriorated quickly. In a rare occurrence, it was discovered her body had not expelled all the fetal tissue and an infection was spreading. Official Georgia State medical expert analysis of her case says Amber should have received a life-saving D&C, but doctors waited 20 hours before deciding to take her to surgery. Amber's blood pressure had taken a dive. Her organs had started failing. In the operating room, her heart stopped. On the way to surgery, Amber's last words to her mother were, "Promise me you'll take care of my son."
Now, as Eric Erickson has pointed out, this is not just a hoax, it's also a clear example of projection. But the pro-life movement did not kill this woman. The abortion pill killed her. These drugs are not, in fact, as safe as Tylenol, as Planned Parenthood claims. Researchers have long understood that sepsis is a rare but potentially fatal adverse effect, those are in quotes, of abortion drugs. What can happen is that in some cases, after these drugs kill the child, there's dead tissue that remains because you've killed the child, and that tissue can cause a serious infection if it's not expelled from the body. So the pill can cause the intended death of the child and the unintended death of the mother. Of course, no one at the National Association of Black Journalists pointed this out to Kamala Harris when she spoke with them. Instead, they let her continue to ramble for another minute or so. And then they pivoted to a question about why it's important for her to be joyful. That's how shameless and embarrassing this whole event was. So here's the rest of Kamala Harris's answer, and then we'll play the follow-up question. Watch.
Laws that make no exception even for rape or incest, which means that you're telling a survivor of a crime of a violation to their body that they have no right to make a decision about what happens to their body next, which is immoral. An approach that doesn't take into account that most people, I think, agree you don't have to abandon your faith or deeply held beliefs to agree the government should not be telling her what to do with her body. If she chooses, she will talk with her pastor, her priest, her rabbi, her imam, but it should not be the government or Donald Trump telling her what to do about her own body and her life, because she's smart enough to know what's in her best interest instead of having her government tell her what to do, especially a bunch of people in these state capitals who think they're in a better position to tell her what to do than she is to know what's in her best interest.
Before we conclude, Madam Vice President, Joyful Warrior has been used to describe
You
your
didn't
campaign.
see that just a minute ago, though. Okay, I'm back to my joyful part.
And your opponent and Republicans have at times weaponized you laughing in campaign ads, for example. Why is joy important to you to insert into this election? And what do you make of Republicans using that as a way to suggest that you're not a serious candidate?
So Kamala lies about the death of a young woman and her children in Georgia, and then she says that you're immoral if you think that the government should tell a woman what to do about her own body and her life, even though it's not her body we're talking about, it's the body of the child. She also suggests that the Georgia law bans abortion in cases of rape and incest, which is not true. And instead of any kind of follow-up, she gets asked about her joy. And nobody at this useless organization of black journalists thought to correct the record on Amber Thurman. No one thought to point out that, in fact, the pro-life movement is concerned about the best interests and the body of the child in addition to the mother. In her entire 2-minute-long rambling answer, Kamala didn't explain why mothers should be able to kill their children if they determine that it's in their best interests, or explain why the interests of the child is not weighed at all as a factor. Or explain how it could be in the interest of the child to be killed. Instead, she simply declared that if you're a Christian or a Muslim or any other religious faith, then killing children isn't really incompatible with your beliefs. And you can just take her word on that. She's an expert on the topic. She celebrates Kwanzaa, after all. There's another Georgia woman mentioned in this report from ProPublica named Candy Miller. She was a 41-year-old mother of 3 who suffered from diabetes, lupus, and hypertension. Apparently, her health was so fragile that doctors warned that another pregnancy could potentially be fatal. Now, according to ProPublica, when she became pregnant anyway in 2022, quote, she avoided doctors and navigated an abortion on her own. The article continues, Miller ordered abortion pills online, but she did not expel all the fetal tissue and would need a D&C procedure to clear it from her uterus and stave off sepsis, a grave and painful infection. Her teenage son watched her suffer for days after she took the pills, bedridden and moaning. In the early hours of November 12th, 2022, her husband found her unresponsive in bed, her 3-year-old daughter at her side. An autopsy later found, quote, a lethal combination of painkillers, including the dangerous opioid fentanyl. This situation, again, is being blamed on the pro-life movement and the overturning of Roe. ProPublica, citing a report from a state committee of experts, concluded that this was also a preventable death because they determined that Candy Miller was responding to the Georgia legislation when she ordered the abortion pills online. But again, that doesn't make the Georgia legislation responsible for what happened. If there's a misunderstanding of the law, that's not the law's fault. If this woman had gone to the hospital instead of taking a lethal combination of painkillers, then doctors could have saved her life. Under Georgia law, there's nothing that would have prevented them from doing that. In reality, abortion pills themselves are what led to the deaths of these women and their children in Georgia. The abortion pills killed all of those people. These mothers' decisions to take the abortion pill and the abortion pill itself is what led to everything that happened as a result of taking it. If the abortion pill was not taken, then both of the women would be alive and their children would also be alive. Now, every reasonable person who looks at these cases will come to that conclusion. And yet the Democrats have found a way to make these deaths an indictment of the pro-life movement, an indictment of the people who are against those pills being passed out. And once again, the media is going along with it. This is how the abortion industry gets away with never grappling with or acknowledging the dangers of abortion. And that would be the danger. Obviously, it presents a 100% danger to the child who's being targeted, but also the danger of abortion to the women, to the mothers. Every abortion-related death is somehow transformed into a death caused by a lack of access to abortion. Kamala Harris and the National Association of Black Journalists would rather push this false narrative instead of being honest with women about the consequences of these pills. These are people who would rather see women die than tell them not to kill their children. And as a result, many more women like Candy Miller and Amber Thurman will end up with this same fate, tragically. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. What is a wireless company? No, it shouldn't be a big data company. No, it shouldn't be a political action campaign. And no, a wireless company shouldn't make you believe that you only have 2 options for data, unlimited or unlimited. And both are stupidly expensive. A wireless company, pure and simple, should connect you to the people and things you love. A wireless company should give you lightning fast 5G coverage at a lower cost than you're paying today. And a wireless company should have an excellent customer service team based right here in America who can help make switching easy. Essentially, all wireless companies should be like Pure Talk, but unfortunately, they're not. So you should switch right now. And if you do, at puretalk.com/Walsh, you also get 1 year free of Daily Wire Plus, where you can stream What is a Woman for free and watch me debunk yet another myth. Support Pure Talk, a wireless company who wants to be a wireless company and nothing more. And here's the kicker. They also support the same values you do. And remember, it takes courage to stand for your values and takes even more to stand against those who try to silence you. puretalk.com/Walsh. That's puretalk.com/Walsh. So as mentioned, Kamala Harris had an event with Oprah last night. Oprah pretended to interview her, and we were treated to some of the most some of the most Kamala Harris answers we've ever heard. And I'll save the worst one for last, or the best one, depending on how you look at it. First, here's Kamala struggling to give an approximation of an answer when she's asked about her plan for the border. It's a good question, simple, straightforward question. But she struggles to answer it. Let's watch.
When you become president, what would be your specific steps? Yeah, of course. What would be your specific steps to strengthening the border?
So it's a wonderful and important question. You know, my background was as a prosecutor, and I was also the elected attorney general for 2 terms of a border state. So this is not a theoretical issue for me. This is something I've actually worked on. Okay. I have prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. I take very seriously the importance of having a secure border and ensuring the safety of the American people. Sadly, where we are now can be traced most recently back to the fact that when the United States Congress, members of the Congress, including some of the most conservative Republicans, came up with a border security bill. And here's what that border security bill would have done. It would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border. Let me tell you, those border agents are working around the clock. It would have just been about giving them some support and relief, which is probably why the border agents actually endorsed the bill. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl. And I'm looking at people from all over the country here, so I don't need to tell the folks who are watching this what fentanyl has done to families, to kids in our country, and the need to take seriously stemming the flow coming into our country and addressing that extraordinary and tragic issue in terms of its effect. The bill would have allowed us to have more resources to prosecute transnational criminal organizations. And it would have been part of the solution. And Donald Trump called up those folks and said, don't put that bill on the floor for a vote.
So to answer Justin's question, now that that bill has gone and hasn't passed, will you reintroduce that?
Absolutely. And when I am elected president of the United States, I will make sure that bill gets to my desk.
Okay, so a few things here. She doesn't answer the question. She's asked what she'll do to fix the border. Simple question, good question. Answers with a long, winding discourse about how the border problems are Trump's fault. Never actually gives her own plan. Needs Oprah to come in at the end and answer the question for her, acting like literally as her spokeswoman. But notice something else. She begins her answer by saying that she has worked on this problem because she was the Attorney General of California. Well, wait a second. You worked on this problem as Attorney General of California, you say, but I thought, didn't you work on this problem as Vice President? Why didn't you say you worked on the problem in the role that you currently have? Like, that's an odd thing. Well, why didn't she say that? Well, because everyone knows the problem is worse now. You know, it's like when I was 19 or whatever, and I was interviewing for a job at, I think it was maybe Home Depot, and I gave 3 references from previous employers. But I did not include my most recent job as a reference. And of course, the interviewer asked me about that. And the reason I didn't include it is because I got fired from that job. So we're just going to skip over. We're going to skip over the thing I did most recently. And I'll tell you about stuff from a couple of years ago. How about that? And I still got the job because, they'll, whatever. But it's a similar kind of thing, but much worse in this case. When you're skipping over the most recent job you had, when you're trying to when you're trying to explain why you should get a new job, and you're going back to jobs from years ago, but skipping the one that you actually have right now, well, that tells us something about how you performed in that job. Couple of other moments. Let's go here. This is Kamala talking about being a gun owner, and using language and a tone here that we have not seen from her in the past when it comes to this particular issue. Let's watch.
I'm a gun owner. Tim Walz is a gun.
I did not know that.
If somebody breaks in my house, they're getting shot. Sorry.
Yes. I hear that. I hear that.
Probably should not have said that.
But
my staff will deal with that later.
Yeah, so funny. Laugh it up there, Chuckles. So you support gun rights for yourself, but not for the rest of us. That's what you're saying. That's the hilarious joke here. Is that yeah, she's going to protect her house with a gun because she's important. She basically admits her hypocrisy because she says that her staff isn't going to, she shouldn't have said that. Her staff's going to have to deal with it. But what do you mean they're going to have to deal with it? Why is it a problem that you said that? Trump could say something like that and his staff would not be upset. It wouldn't be something he had to deal with later. Because saying that you would shoot an intruder in your home is a totally normal thing. It's not controversial. Nearly every American citizen feels the same way. It's only a problem for you, and you're aware that it's a problem for you because in your case, it's hypocritical because you're a gun-grabbing tyrant. So she's essentially admitting that. Finally, we get to the grand finale. I don't know what the question was that sparked this ramble, but it's long, as you would expect from anything that Kamala Harris says. It is long and entirely empty of meaning. We kind of have to watch the whole thing because it is something to behold. This is Kamala Harris. If you had to summarize Kamala Harris in 2 minutes, you would do it with this right here. Watch.
We love our country. I love our country. I know we all do. That's why everybody's here right now. We love our country. We take pride in the privilege of being American. And this is a moment where we can and must come together as Americans, understanding we have so much more in common than what separates us. Let's come together with the character that we are so proud of about who we are, which is we are an optimistic people. We are an optimistic people. Americans, by character, are people who have dreams and ambitions and aspirations. We believe in what is possible. We believe in what can be. And we believe in fighting for that. That's how we came into being. Because the people before us understood that one of the greatest expressions for the love of our country, one of the greatest expressions of patriotism, is to fight for the ideals of who we are, which includes freedom to make decisions about your own body, freedom to be safe from gun violence, freedom to have access to the ballot box, freedom to be who you are and just be, to love who you love openly and with pride, freedom to just be. And that's who we are. We believe in all that. And so this is a moment where we stand knowing what we are fighting for. We're not fighting against. It's what we're fighting for.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
I think that Oprah kind of summed it up at the end. She goes, she's trying to do the speech at the end of the inspirational Disney movie from the 90s. She's trying to do that. And you can almost hear the piano music that she must be hearing in her head while she's saying this, but she can't even get that right because she lacks the necessary coherence because she's a moron. So she's trying to do something vapid and cliched, which would be bad enough, but she can't. That is a level beyond what she's capable of achieving because she's so stupid. I mean, just one line from that ramble. She says, let's come together with the character that we are so proud of about who we are. Let's come together with the character that we're so proud of about who we are. That doesn't mean it literally means nothing. I don't know how to interpret that. I'm not even trying to be, intentionally obtuse to make a point about. I don't know what she's trying to say. I really don't. It's pure abject nonsense. Very, very dumb. Only a very dumb person is capable of saying something like that. It's so dumb that it makes you feel like you're having a stroke when you listen to it. People say that it's word salad. This is not word salad. These are words fed into a wood chipper. This is linguistic mass murder. This is a vocabulary genocide. She's slaughtering words, not making a mere salad of them. And this the thing about Kamala's circuitous, disjointed digressions. It's nonsensical and vapid and quite verbose in the emptiest and most shallow way possible. But at the core of it, to the extent that she's saying anything at all, what she's saying is also twisted and evil. Because the only parts of this ramble that made any sense, the only parts that, when I say make sense, I mean are intelligible, the only parts that were intelligible were the parts where she says that America is built on abortion, gay marriage, and gun confiscation. That's like the three things that the founders of our country either specifically repudiated in the case of gun confiscation, or in the case of the other two, never repudiated because they were so unthinkable in those days that they didn't need to be addressed. And certainly three things that are not rights enumerated in the Constitution. And yet these are the rights, the freedoms that Kamala Harris says the entire country is built on. Nonsensical and evil. That's everything she says is kind of it's a cocktail of nonsense and evil. New York Post has this report. New York Magazine's Washington correspondent Olivia Nuzzi was placed on leave after she had an alleged romantic relationship with former independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. while covering his campaign. Nuzzi, without naming the 70-year-old Kennedy scion, admitted in a Thursday night statement that earlier this year, the nature of some communications between myself and a former reporting subject turned personal. 31-year-old star political reporter insisted that the relationship was not physical in nature. Nuzzi penned a profile on Kennedy that was published in November 2023. Sometime after that, the two began their alleged fling. While reporting on the feature article, Nuzzi visited RFK Jr.'s sprawling Brentwood, California home, and the two went hiking together in Santa Monica Mountains. Mr. Kennedy only met Olivia Nuzzi once in his life for an interview she requested, which yielded a hit piece. The Kennedy spokesperson told the Post when asked about their alleged relationship. After recently coming clean to editors at New York Magazine, Nuzzi was placed on leave. She confessed she had engaged in a personal relationship with a former subject relevant to the 2024 campaign while she was reporting on the campaign, a violation of the magazine's standards around conflicts of interest and disclosures. Kennedy has been married to Curb Your Enthusiasm actress Cheryl Hines, his third wife since 2014. Nuzzi was engaged to Politico reporter and collaborator Ryan Lizza in 2022, but the pair called off their marriage in the last few weeks. Lizza was fired by The New Yorker, where he had been the Washington correspondent in 2017 after he was accused of inappropriate sexual conduct by a colleague. He denied any wrongdoing. So just an all-around mess. And we don't know exactly what happened. RFK Jr.'s camp, I guess, basically denies it. I mean, well, they say that they didn't meet, they only met in person once. But Olivia is saying that their relationship was essentially, digital in nature. So we can fill in the blanks about what sort of digital communications were being sent back and forth. I don't think RFK Jr.'s camp actually denied that explicitly. Or if they did, I didn't see it in this article. But Olivia's employer suspended her, and she admitted to a personal relationship, only saying that it wasn't physical. So this sounds very much like, we don't know for sure yet at this point, but it sounds very much like, at the very least, an emotional affair. If it's true that it wasn't physical, which, I don't necessarily buy that, but even if it wasn't, an engaged woman and a married man should not be having any kind of personal relationship with each other at all, really, outside of an entirely professional context. So what do we take from this? Well, both the media and the political world are full of very dysfunctional people who are basically incapable of forming and maintaining functional human relationships, especially romantic relationships. We take that from it. The whole concept of journalistic ethics is a joke, right? This is a journalist that, by her own admission now, she's saying she was having a personal relationship with somebody that she was covering. I mean, it's just... These people are all frauds. They're all frauds, you know. There's nobody, almost no one in this industry, the journalism industry, who actually cares about journalistic ethics. It's all a joke to them. They don't care. Integrity, all of these things, out the window. They don't care. And I think we know all that. But I take one other thing away from this, and this is going to be a controversial take. This is very provocative. This is my provocative opinion. Okay, I'm going to blow your mind with this insight. Here's an insight that you've never heard before. Because, you know, there's been a lot of like infidelity and stuff in the news in recent days and weeks. So here's my other takeaway. Don't cheat. Don't cheat on your wife. Don't cheat on your husband or your fiance. Don't cheat. Just stop cheating. Why are you doing that? Stop it. Why would you do that? I was just talking about this recently on Jordan Peterson's podcast. And I honestly, and this is not me virtue signaling or whatever. You know, I'm not trying to signal that I'm virtuous because I'm opposed to cheating. I think most people would say, at least in theory, that they are. I just honestly don't even understand quite how people fall into this. I don't. I've been married for almost 13 years, and it's not one of those things where I can say, okay, yeah, you know, it's terrible, you shouldn't do it, but I understand the temptation. I can't say that because I don't really. I truly don't. Because cheating is pure misery. It is guaranteed pure misery. Every time for everyone who's ever done it. You know, you see these stories play out in the news, you see it, you know, in the movies, you see it in your own life, people that you know. We all have been around it. And it's pure misery. Every time. There's just nothing about it. I don't know how anyone could look at that and say, yeah, I want to try this. Let's try this. I mean, you shouldn't cheat on your spouse or fiance primarily because it's wrong. I mean, in the case of your spouse, you've made a vow. You need to honor your vow, honor your family, honor the commitment you've made. It's a grave sin to cheat, and that's the main reason why you shouldn't. That's the reason, really. But also, just from a standpoint of pure self-interest, it's going to make your life so much worse. From the moment you do it until the inevitable moment when it's found out, which it always is. And then for the rest of your life, after it blows up your life, it's nothing but regret and guilt and pain and shame. Nothing but that. And who has time? That's also the other thing that baffles me. I mean, this is a concern very much lower down the list, okay, after the fact that it's evil and traitorous and destroys the lives of everybody involved and all of that, but like much farther down the list, still, I do wonder, who has time for it? You've got a job, kids, a wife. Like, who has time to set up some other secret life and maintain it? And you've got the texting and whatever you're doing. It just sounds incredibly cumbersome and time-consuming and really just tiresome. Who has as an adult, who has time for that? But then again, I guess the lesson here is that sin is always destructive. It's always self-destructive. It's always a lose-lose. And it always leads to misery. And, you know, that's the lesson here. So don't do it. Don't, you know, I don't know. You're thinking of cheating. Go for a jog instead. Go just do anything else with your time. You're nobody ever regrets not cheating, right? No one's ever going to say, man, Wish I'd cheated. Yeah, I had that chance 6 months ago. I wish I'd cheated. Like, no one ever says that. You don't say that. So, okay, let's talk about this from Chris Cuomo a few days ago. I actually did his show last week for the first time, and I have to say I was pretty impressed with how straight down the line he was. Fair, straightforward. I didn't get the sense that he was like on my side by any stretch. I don't think he's a conservative, but he was asking good, kind of objective questions. There was any gotcha moments. There didn't appear to be any kind of hidden agenda, and I was impressed with that. And now here he is a few days later. This is earlier in the week, but Monday or Tuesday, with a message about the Trump assassination attempt. That second assassination attempt that we've already forgotten and is not in the headlines anymore. But here's what he had to say about that. Watch.
And the reaction and the lack of reaction to the second attempt on Trump in the last couple of months. Oh, but the guy didn't even shoot. What if it was your father? Well, what if it was Kamala Harris or President Biden? God forbid. You think that it would be almost a shoulder shrug and more of talk about the Secret Service and allocation of funds than just how crazy it is that this is what's happening in our country? That reaction of, well, come on, don't make too much of it. He had an AK-47 pointed at him. The reaction is unacceptable. And it's the second time media and political players have gotten away with playing down what should be a cause for panic. And you can think what you want about Trump. He does not have many more full-throated critics of what he says and does than me. Okay? And yet I called him today because I am ashamed of how we are responding and not responding to the threats on him. And I feel for his family. And I know you can roll your eyes and say, oh, yeah, he asked for it. Listen, that's your choice, and I think it's a wrong choice, okay? We got to get out of the judgment business unless it's judging ourselves, and you got to start rewarding things that are better. And I got to tell you, I don't know how he stays in the race. I don't know how he got up after being shot in the head, and you people who try to mitigate that, you need to check yourself. He gets up, pumping his fist, stays in the race, barely even talks about it. I criticize him all the time. That's my job, and he deserves it. But he doesn't deserve this. A guy pointing an AK-47 at him while he's playing golf? And we take solace in the fact that the guy didn't get any rounds off. That does not work for me. If I had been through what that guy's been through in the last 2 months, you would not know where I am. You would never see me on TV again. No way I would do that. I don't know how he does it.
So, good. I mean, it shows a capacity for self-analysis and self-criticism that most of the media completely lacks. And he's exactly right. It should be a very, very big deal that someone tried to kill Trump twice. Yet Trump's first assassination attempt was out of the headlines in a week. Second one was gone in a day. When really, if anything, the second attempt is an even bigger deal than the first because it was the second. The fact that someone got that close again, if anything, makes it an even bigger deal, an even bigger story. Now, you might say this is all due to the American public and, sort of our inability to focus on anything for more than 5 seconds, which is something I talk about all the time. Our inability to remember anything that happened prior to yesterday. But that's not entirely a sufficient excuse in this case or explanation. I don't think you can chalk it up entirely to cultural ADHD. Because we know this. Here's what we know. This we know for sure, that if Kamala Harris was almost killed twice, it would be the only thing that the media talked about until the election. If Kamala Harris, God forbid, was someone shot at her and she was shot in the ear, right? Already, that's the only thing we talk about until the election. If it happened again, I mean, it's hard to even imagine what the reaction would be upon the second attempt on Kamala Harris's life. I don't know. There'd be like a national lockdown. I don't know. They'd lock us all down, not let anyone leave their homes to keep her safe. I don't think that there's extraordinary lengths would be gone. They'd go to extraordinary lengths. And certainly for the media, it would be top of the headline every day. Every story that had, every news item that happened would be kind of filtered through this lens. And, you know, if there was a debate, every question would revolve around it. And we all know that. So, yeah, we know that the American public in general has trouble paying attention to anything, but we also know that the media still does have an extraordinary amount of power to set the narrative and to bury narratives that they don't like, and that's what's happened here. You know, it's funny, the left loves to lecture us about public health, but they seem awfully quiet about the surge of diseases flooding across our open border. Measles, TB, meningitis, hepatitis, all making a comeback thanks to our brilliant immigration policies. That's why I've stocked my home with the medical emergency kit from the Wellness Company. Let me tell you, this isn't some flimsy box of Band-Aids and antiseptic wipes. This is the real deal, a mini urgent care center for your home. It's packed with essential, often hard-to-get medications like amoxicillin, Z-Pak, and yes, even the media's favorite boogeyman, ivermectin. With 8 doctor-prescribed medications and a guidebook covering over 30 illnesses, you'll be ready for everything from COVID, strep throat, pneumonia, bronchitis, tick bites, UTIs, and more. No doctor visit, no pharmacy lines, no copay. Every American household should have at least one medical emergency kit. It's not just about preparedness, it's about independence from a medical system that's becoming increasingly unreliable. Go to urgentcarekit.com/Walsh, answer a few questions, and they'll ship it right to your door. Use promo code Walsh to get $45 off right now. That's urgentcarekit.com/Walsh and enter promo code Walsh, urgentcarekit.com/Walsh. The number one new comedy in America is Am I Racist? And the only way to see it is in theaters. We've already claimed the number 4 spot at the box office, and the audience has spoken with a massive 98% score on Rotten Tomatoes. Am I Racist is officially verified hot. The reviews are rolling in from everyone, everywhere. Joe Rogan says it's laugh out loud hilarious. American Thinker calls it brilliant, hysterical expose of the race hustling industry. The Wall Street Journal only needed one word to describe the movie: hilarious. Don't miss your chance to see the number one new comedy in America. Head to amiracist.com for tickets and showtimes near you now. Now let's get to our daily cancellation. You might remember that a few months ago, when Democrats were desperately trying to manufacture enthusiasm for Kamala Harris after the coup that overthrew Joe Biden, they held several Zoom calls involving celebrities that were segregated by race and gender. And they were all pretty humiliating, but one of these Zoom calls managed to stand apart above the rest. It was its own category of embarrassing and unwatchable. I'm referring to the White Dudes for Harris video call, which I talked about on the show at the time. It was basically a procession of beta males and washed-up actors who simultaneously expressed their love for Kamala Harris and their deep, profound regret for being white. Here's just a mercifully short excerpt of it in case you've wiped it from your memory like everyone else has or would like to. Watch.
Also, quick observation. They have Kid Rock, Kevin Sorbo, and a dolphin aficionado. And we have the Hulk, Samwise Gamgee, Luke Skywalker, and Mayor Pete just on this Zoom. That's pretty damn cool.
Josh Gad did as well, and many more.
What a variety of whiteness we have here. We got the dude, we got Pete. It's like a rainbow of beige.
So I'm pretty sure that's a guy named Bradley Whitford who starred in The West Wing. And as you just heard, he appeared to come up with the term rainbow of beige on the spot to describe all the white dudes lining up for Harris on a Zoom call. Pete Buttigieg, Sam from Lord of the Rings, the dude from Big Lebowski, all part of this rainbow. Now, you might have thought that a rainbow was something that comprised of many different colors. By definition, that's like what a rainbow is. But apparently, in this case, we have a rainbow of just beige. He's saying, and I don't know. Maybe Pete Buttigieg makes it a rainbow because he's gay, and LGBTQ activists have co-opted the rainbow for their own purposes. Maybe this is just one of those metaphors that doesn't make any sense. I think it's more the latter. But in any event, rainbow of beige is certainly the weirdest way to refer to a bunch of white people that's ever been uttered in the English language. And not even catchy, it's just a terrible line all the way around. If you were an organizer of this Zoom call, you'd obviously want to forget that the whole thing happened in the first place. But you definitely unequivocally want to make sure that nobody ever uttered the phrase rainbow of beige ever again. It was probably the low light of the single most cringeworthy Zoom call of all time. And I say the most cringeworthy Zoom call of all time, and that includes the one that Jeffrey Toobin attended. But someone out there with a lot of money apparently disagrees with my assessment, and that person or group of individuals has created something called the Rainbow of Beige PAC. Yes, apparently someone on the Zoom call thought the term Rainbow of Beige was so compelling that they started a whole political action committee based around that name. They're raising money and everything else, and apparently one of the lead organizers, a guy named Ross Racketto, used to work for Julian Castro. They have a website at whitedudesforharris.com, which announces, quote, "We know that as white dudes, we have both a strong and positive role to play in America's shared future." And along with the website, they're also releasing political advertisements in an apparent attempt to appeal to other white males with very low testosterone. And I promise you that no matter how low your expectations are for this advertisement, the first one from White Dudes for Harris was released this week. However low your expectations are, it is even worse than that. Here it is.
Hey, white dudes. So I think we're all pretty sick of hearing how much we suck. Every time you go online, it's the same story. We're the problem. And yeah, some white dudes are. Trump and all his MAGA buddies are out there making it worse, shouting nonsense in their stupid red hats and acting like they speak for us when they don't. All they've ever done is screw us over. But if you're not on the MAGA train, where do you go? Isn't it just swapping out one crappy option for another? Then it hit me. This isn't about picking teams. It's about who's got a plan that's gonna make life better for me and my family. So I've been doing my own research and decided to check out Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And before you jump down my throat, they're actually talking to guys like us. No lectures, no BS. Just real solutions that protect our freedoms and help us take care of the people who matter. And honestly, I think Harris and Walz are the ones to make that happen. End of the day, you're your own man. It's your call. But if anyone gives you crap about it, tell them it's none of their damn business.
So this is an ad that's supposed to appeal to white men, and because it says "damn" and "crap," and that really impresses us. I wasn't sure if I wanted to vote for Kamala Harris. I kind of, I was actually leaning against it, voting for her. If it might shock you to learn. But then they put that ad out and they said "damn" and "crap," and I said, you know what? These people, they get me. They really do. I think I gotta take the plunge here. So it's an ad for white men, but even the ad that is for men, supposedly, begins by trashing white men. So even in an ad where they're supposed to appeal, they still spend the first 20 seconds like acknowledging that, yeah, some men are terrible. Right, fellas? They can't even just pander to men for a minute. They've got to set aside, a third of the ad for the purposes of trashing men. So other than masochists, that's not going to win over a lot of converts, but it's apparently how Kamala Harris supporters think they're going to win this election. And by the way, it's also because the ad isn't really for men. It's for women. Everything Kamala Harris' campaign does is for women. And so this is an ad that liberal white women will think appeals to white men. It's like basically for a liberal woman who's married. It's an ad that she can see and then go, oh, my husband will love this. This will convince my husband to vote for Kamala. Here, honey, come look at this ad. You'll love this ad. That's really what it's supposed to do. So you can imagine what the comments are below this video, but just for fun, here's a sampling. Quote, "Is the target audience for this ad gay guys in NYC? Because otherwise I'm not sure if the ad makers have ever met white guys before." Another one says, "Democrats, don't be overtly racist for even a single day challenge. Impossible." Then there's this, quote, "I am a non-binary, polynormative, racially ambiguous, Wolfkin Satanist, neuroatypical, non-masculine person. Is there room for me in this movement? My wife's boyfriend told me about this excellent campaign, and I want to help in any way I can. I'll be ready to knock on doors as soon as the monkeypox on my face clears up. So they at least they managed to reach that demographic. There's also a bunch of people who seem to think that it's a parody because there's no way an advertisement could possibly be this bad. Quote, I thought this was a parody. LMAO, the Kamala campaign is really bad at this whole making ads thing. One more says, quote, this is a stupid ad meant for misinformed, gullible people who feel shame for being white. It's the definition of racism. The account, The Rabbit Hole, which uploads a lot of charts on X, had one chart for this occasion as well. You can see it here. It shows that young men between the ages of 18 and 29 are fleeing the Democrat Party. As recently as 2016, more than half of young men said that they identify with or lean towards the Democrat Party. Now that number sits at just 39%. So they lost about 12% support in a key demographic that historically has been extremely left of center. And that's obviously concerning to Democrats, which is why they're organizing these Zoom calls and producing advertisements like this. As the organizer of White Dudes for Harris put it on X, quote, we're talking directly to the white men and creating space for folks who've traditionally been ignored by the left. So they do acknowledge that the left is ignoring white people, but that's actually not exactly what's happening, because the left isn't ignoring white people so much as actively demonizing them. It's deriding them on the basis of their skin color at every opportunity. And this ad does exactly the same thing. It explicitly derides them in the beginning, and then the rest of it is insulting and demeaning to the intelligence of white people. So in some ways, white men are finally getting a taste of the patronizing, pandering, explicit race-based and demographic-based pandering that every other demographic group has been treated to for many years from the left. And I think, which is why after you experience that, it's like, I'd much rather be ignored. Okay. Can you go back to ignoring that we exist as a white man? Just go back to, just ignore that we exist. I'd much prefer that. If nothing else, this ad makes it abundantly clear that Democrats still have no idea how to speak to men. Even when they're trying to appeal to young men, they end up saying that a lot of them are evil because of their skin color. And they say that even though you're an evil white guy, you should vote for Kamala Harris anyway because she can supposedly fix the economy, the same economy that she's effectively been running for the past 4 years. So it's quite a pitch. What's going on here is pretty clear. Democrats like Kamala Harris are trying to shore up their weaknesses among critical demographic groups ahead of the election. They think they're losing badly among these groups in swing states, so they're dialing the pandering up to 11. But it's not something they can really fake. Like, they don't actually know how to interact with normal human beings, whether they're gun owners or young white males, as we saw with the gun owner clip earlier, or whatever it is. So they're coming off extremely patronizing and inauthentic instead. Now, I made this point before, but Donald Trump, he's not popular with gun owners simply because he tells Oprah that he'll personally shoot anyone who breaks into his home, as Kamala Harris said last night to Oprah. He's not popular with young white people because he constantly berates them over their skin color or because he has a lot of washed up actors on his side. Donald Trump is popular because he talks to voters as if they're human beings, not complete morons. Unlike Kamala, he actually believes certain things. He doesn't change his entire ideology in order to win votes. And he shows an authenticity that is like the main thing that resonates with voters, especially the voters that Kamala's pandering to with that ad. The problem is that Kamala isn't authentic, and she also isn't a very convincing actor. And her surrogates apparently aren't much better at the job either. This is why their grand plan to appeal to white men is to talk about beige rainbows and how much white men suck. Even when they're desperate for votes, they still can't hide their disdain. And that is why the White Dudes for Harris, along with every other racially segregated organization promoting Kamala Harris, is today canceled. That'll do it for the show today and this week. Talk to you on Monday. Have a great weekend. Godspeed.
Republicans are Nazis. You cannot separate yourselves from the bad white people.
Growing up, I never thought much about race. It never really seemed to matter that much, at least not to me. Am I racist?
I would really appreciate it if you left.
I'm trying to learn. I'm on this journey. If I'm going to sort this out, I need to go deeper undercover.
They gon' say I'm racist.
Joining us now is Matt, certified DEI expert.
Here's my certification. And what you're doing is you're stretching out of your whiteness. This is more for you and less for you. Is America inherently racist?
The word inherent is challenging there.
I want to rename the George Washington Monument to the George Floyd Monument.
America is racist to its bones.
So inherently.
Yeah, this country is a piece of
white
folks,
white
trash, white supremacy, white woman, white boy.
Is there a black person around here? What's a black person right here? Does he not exist?
Hi, Robin.
Hi, what's your name?
I'm Matt.
I just had to ask who you are because you have to be careful.
Never be too careful.
In theaters now. Rated PG-13.